Improviser's Guide to the Cello. Jacob back here with you for another edition of our Lick of the Week, and this time it's going to be Jean-Luc Ponty's classic solo from the title track to his album Sunday Walk. Now, when I was younger, I didn't realize that any string player had really mastered sort of smoking post-bop language, and I stupidly thought that I was going to be the first. Little did I know that Jean-Luc Ponty had beaten me to it by about 50 years. And done it really, really amazingly well. As a matter of fact, I was doing an interview recently with Zach Brock on the pickup test, an incredible interview that you should check out if you haven't, where we discovered our mutual love and admiration for this particular album. And what I'd like to talk about today is the idea of hemiolas. Now, obviously, one of the cool things about taking down an entire solo as opposed to just a lick is that it really allows you to get inside of the mind of the improviser and see how he takes an idea, whether it's a rhythmic idea, a motivic idea, an intervallic idea, and expands on it throughout the solo. And we've spent a lot of time in previous Licks of the Week talking about the fact that when we see this kind of repetition of ideas or concepts, it doesn't mean that the improviser doesn't have a lot of ideas. It basically is a sign or shows you how creative they really are, right? If you want to be creative, you need to limit yourself. And we never feel listening to this, even though Ponty is playing hemiolas more often than not, if you just counted up the measures, because Ponty is so creative with it, right? And brings in all of these aspects of his style. Remember, in playing, it's very intimidating in music to think of trying to learn a million licks, right? And a lot of my young students ask me, how do I learn a million licks so I can, play a lot of great solos? The idea is, can you take a single lick or a single concept and turn it into a million? And once again, we have a master improviser here showing us how it's done. So Ponty takes these hemiolas and uses a lot of his signature tricks and just things that I absolutely love about his style in general, and uses them to great advantage here. And so let's take a look at just a few of them. First, in bar 6, we have a really nice little scale line, and in this case, it's a dotted eighth note with 3/16. Now, with this idea, I actually really like the scale sequence because he jumps over the 4th scale degree to the 5th and then lands back on the 4th. So every iteration of the pattern, we come to a note that's a 4th above, which gives us kind of a cool quartal feel. Right? Great way to outline a dominant chord or a sus chord, or just to sound really groovy. Now in bar 14, we have a great example of a little bit of rhythmic variation here. He starts with, again, a dotted eighth note, and then 16th eighth. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then in the second iteration, he actually reverses the second two notes to an 8/16. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. By the way, if you haven't downloaded the transcription yet and you're on the Improviser's Guide site, do that now so you can follow along and know what the heck I'm talking about. Again, at bar 14. Really, really cool, but again, staying within that hemiola concept, just altering a single note. It's amazing how much mileage Ponty gets with so little material. Now, right after that, he goes into another hemiola, and Ponty makes a habit out of doing that actually in this particular solo. After one hemiola, he'll just put another pattern right after it, and yet he's able to constantly kind of build energy. In this case, he uses something I like to call the open string trick in bar 15, or 16 I should say. Now, he's not actually using an open string in this context, even though he will later. But the idea is he's just simply playing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But by playing the same note in a slightly out of tune, slidey way on another string, we get this really, really clashy, intense kind of effect. It's amazing. Most, or a lot of lesser soloists will be playing a ton of notes and have to work really hard to get the music to build as much as Ponty can with just a very simple trick like this. And also gives him a chance to think about what he's going to do next and buy himself some time by playing these repeated patterns. Next, at bar 22, we just talked about using the hemiola in a scale. Now he's using it in arpeggio. First in A major, then in the next bar, a G major. Check it out. Very cool. In this particular case, we have a dotted eighth note and then 3/16. Sound familiar? It's the exact same rhythmic pattern we had in our first scalar idea. But boy, does it sound completely different. Scales going up, in this case, arpeggios going down. Now in bar 24 and 26, Ponty uses our open string trick again, this time with an actual open string. And all we have is just an eighth and a 16th. This is a very, very common sound you'll hear in the blues, right? Blues guitarists, guys like Chuck Berry, they loved using little tricks like this on their guitar. He follows it with a similar idea, but now he actually goes down to the G sharp and holds the A. So before we just had the A, now making it again even more intense. One hemiola going into another, again, very, very cool. Now, in bar 33, we have another one of Jean-Luc Ponty's sort of tricks, and it's a trick that actually every jazz violinist uses constantly, and that's the trick of taking a very simple shape, or sequence in this case. By the way, I love this hemiola bowing with 1 plus 2 slurred plus 3 slurred. 1, 2, 3. Right? But as we're phasing over the beat, it's an incredibly hip line. And Ponty simply takes that shape and raises it. And then, right? So by doing that, it sounds like he's sort of going outside of the key, right? You'll hear, as I said, like Didier Lockwood, Adam Baldish, they use this trick all the time, right? And for those of you that haven't worked out a lot of actual harmonic language on your instrument, it's one way to sound like you have. Especially if you're using it in the context that's rhythmically interesting, which Ponty is in this particular case. Moving on, at bar 44, we have one of the most garden variety patterns that we all practice from Suzuki Book 1 on. Now, just like we've heard Ponty hippify a lowly scale and a lowly arpeggio, now we have broken thirds in the key of F minor. And then, what could be more boring? Well, Ponty adds this hemiolic effect by, hemiolic, is that a word? I don't know. Hemiolic effect, let's go with it for now, by doubling the first note, so now we have groups of 3 and we get our phasing. Very, very cool. Last but not least, in bar 51 and 60, Ponty introduces yet another signature element of his style, ghosting. So he's added double stops, and what he's doing is he's leaving or making one of the notes almost inaudible so that he continues to feel the groove, but we hear a rhythm that's a little more interesting. It goes like this. As he does that, the up bow is a little bit muted. So what we hear is right? But what Ponty's actually playing is kind of cool rocking there on the fourths, right, between the top two strings and just the lower string. This is a technique I've heard Tracy Silverman refer to as strum bowing, but again, it's just the idea of keeping a consistent rhythmic grid for the sake of groove, and then with a little bit of left hand muting sometimes, and just lightening in the right hand. Leaving out some other notes. It would be a great study for a section like this to simply move the ghosted note around so that you could create all kinds of cool rhythmic variations. And that really is the idea here. Most of us are constantly struggling to come up with more and more stuff to play, as I said. And this solo of Ponty reminds us of how much a great master can do with just a little bit of information. Well, I hope you're as inspired as I am. And for those of you that aren't members of the Improviser's Guide, I'd like to remind you that for less than the cost of a single private lesson, a single private lesson, Jacob? Yes, that's right. For less than the cost of a single private lesson, you can get a month's worth of the world's greatest online learning community for creative cellists. We've got amazing courses, seminars, lick of the weeks like these, practice routines, and so much more for you. And the best part is that it's designed by cellists for cellists. Not just recycling old theoretical material, but actually giving you new insights to help clarify your fingerboard and to help you achieve your full creative potential. If you're serious about your cello playing, I can't recommend it enough. And I'll see you at the Improviser's Guide.